We all have a plan until life decides otherwise. One phone call, one diagnosis, one unexpected loss, and suddenly the path we thought we were on does not look the same anymore. And in those moments, it's easy to wonder that what am I supposed to do now? Where do I even begin? But maybe navigating unexpected challenges is not about having the perfect plan. Maybe it's about learning how to find your footing when the plan changes completely. Welcome, dear listeners, to Healthy Mind, Healthy Life. I am Swati, and this is a space where we talk about mental health in real terms. The experiences we all go through, the things we struggle with, and the ways we can learn to move through them. Today, we are talking about something none of us can really avoid, that is, life's unexpected challenges. Joining me today is Bill Derrick, a business leader, coach, author, and public speaker who has experienced firsthand what it means to adapt when life does not go according to plan. Bill, it's really great to have you with us.
It's great to be here, Swati. I look forward to our conversation, and hopefully, your listeners will gain a few things from our conversation that'll help.
Thank you so much for that, Bill. So let's start with something I think a lot of us hear when we are going through a difficult time. People often say that you just have to be strong, bounce back, and move forward. But is that actually helpful? Like, what do you think we misunderstand about resilience when we look at it as simply getting over something as quickly as possible?
Yeah, another thing that people say, trying to be nice, they say, well, you'll look back at this someday, and it'll be the best thing that ever happened to you. Well, people did that to me when I was going through my storms, and I did not find that real helpful. Um, Resilience, getting through the storms. Um, Sometimes the best help from others is just to say, just to be a little empathy. I'm sorry you have to go through this. Um, Let me know if there's anything I can do to help. And, if you're that type, you can say, I'm going to pray for you. And, sometimes those things mean more when you're going through those unexpected challenges because in my case, and I think you kind of alluded to it, uh, I wasn't going to go through these types of storms. I mean, I was immune from these storms. So I thought until I wasn't. So by definition, these storms hit you really hard because you don't see them coming. They're not predicted. And all of a sudden, you're going, wow, what do I do? And, resilience, yes, being strong, but also understanding that this is something we all go through in life and we have to take it one step at a time. And, whether that's strength or whatever, to me, resilience is understanding we don't know what the total path is going to be as we go through the storm, but we can see far enough to take that first step, so to speak, and just take another step and just do a little bit each time. That's resilience.
So, what I feel like is when something unexpected happens, it's not just the situation that changes. Sometimes our whole sense of stability changes with it. We start questioning our plans, our identity, even our sense of control. So, from your experience, what's actually happening beneath the surface when someone is going through that kind of disruption?
Yeah. there's also a saying out there that if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. Because life, as you said in the introduction, life doesn't always go the way we plan on it going. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't make plans, especially as a business leader. It's really important to make plans and to have that, that 1 and 3 year, 5 year, 10 year, strategic plan. That's important. But I think that you have to understand that things change. Now, when you go through these times, whether it's a business storm, or in my case, it was both a business storm and then a medical storm, uh, you will change and you will learn a lot about yourself. You will learn a lot about life. And I think it's important to understand that. Um, and I always I always state that when you go through those times, you will change. And the question is, will it be for the better?
And when someone feels like their whole sense of control has been shaken,
Hmm.
mm, yeah, where would you encourage them to begin? Like, what's the first thing they need to reconnect with?
So I I was one of those people that had life under control. The first part of my book, that's what I talk about, being in control and how prideful I was of being in control and seemingly not having enough empathy for others who were going through tough times. Uh, and I'm not saying that perhaps I needed a dose of my own medicine, but certainly going through the storm taught me a little bit about all that. So I was in control until I wasn't. And then I realized there's a lot of things I thought I could control in life that maybe I can't. But in the end, Swati, I think simply put, there are two things the way I see it now that we can always be in control of. And that's our attitude and our effort. Yes, we will have control over other things from time to time, and it might come and go. But one thing you can always be assured of is you can control your attitude and your effort. Make it a good one. And getting through the storm, will it be easier? Maybe, maybe not. But as my book, Restored by the Storm, indicates, by having that right attitude and that right effort, um, it will help change you for the better as you go through that storm.
That makes a lot of sense. Like sometimes we are not just, trying to deal with what happened. We are also trying to figure out who we are now that things have changed. And I think recognizing that can make the experience feel a little less confusing. So, Bill, let's bring this into everyday life for a moment. Like someone might be going through a major change, but from the outside, they look completely fine. They are still going to work, answering messages, taking care of responsibilities. So, what are some of the quieter signs that someone might actually be struggling more than they are letting go?
That gets back to what you mentioned earlier about that idea that we have to be strong. You know, keep it to ourselves and just power through this one way or another. And maybe no one will know. Well, people will eventually figure it out. And those signs um, sometimes might be just that lack of joy uh, that that a person may typically have, or that lack of not being able to, when you say hi and how are you, what a great day, all that, and they may just give you this nod. Um, I am certainly not a psychologist. I am just someone who's who has lived through these storms, and I know that for me, um, at first, I was just gonna, more or less power through. I was gonna get through this, especially when the Great Recession hit and our business was starting to go downhill a lot. My attitude was, "This can't be happening to me. Um, I'm gonna power through it. I'm a leader. The employees need to understand. They need to see strength, and they need to see that I'm going to do what it takes." Now, certainly, there's something to be said about a leader, using the analogy being captain of the ship. Uh, they certainly have to appreciate that the leader understands the seriousness of the situation, but at the same time, that the leader has the ability to say, here's our plan. We're going to get through it. I have a plan, and we're going to get through it. As far as the employees, or people in your staff, uh, I think that when you're going through a serious situation, whether it's home or work or whatever it is, eventually you can't hide it. And um, eventually you try to hide that stress that's going on inside of you, that anxiety. And I do believe eventually it will show in some way. It might be in performance. It might be in tardiness. It might be just in the way that the person interacts with people. Um, but I think eventually you will see that. When I was going through my cancer stuff, when I was first diagnosed, our first response was to hide it, to not let people know. And part of that was my desire um, to have an attitude that says, I may have cancer, but I'm not going to let it control my life, the way I live. Now, I think that's a great attitude to have. However, it doesn't mean that you can't share that with others and that you can't allow others to just to help you along the way, whether it be an encouraging word or whatever. So, I personally am the type of person that doesn't believe hiding hiding your troubles is a good way to go for the long run. Maybe in the short term, yes, but in the long run, it I don't think it works well. And I think there's all sorts of signs out there. Um, if you're a personable person, a leader, and that's what the first storm taught me, to be more more people oriented, more a manager of people, be willing to stop by somebody's office and just say, "Hey, what you working on? How are things going? What'd you do this weekend? You know, what are your plans?" Things like that. Um, People will start to open up to you. And I know maybe that wasn't a direct answer to the question you asked, but I think that those are some good thoughts.
Yeah, that was assuring. So, Bill, you have worked as a coach and you have also experienced your own unexpected challenges. So, when someone is standing at that point where they know they need to move forward, but honestly don't know which direction to take, how do you help them figure out what comes next?
That that is the dirty little secret. That is a very tough thing to answer. Um, I think first of all, being able to understand that the storm will eventually end, because we get into these storms, no matter how long they last. We get in the middle of them and we start to get that mindset. I know at least I did, where this is just never going to end, that this is the new normal. Um, And quite frankly, it isn't. The storm will end eventually. Situations will change. No matter how dire they are, I believe that, the storm will end. You'll end up somewhere different than you were before you started, but the storm will end. And I think it's important that everybody realizes that while they're in that hard time in life, that it's not forever, that it will change. Eventually, things will change again. Um, I also think that it's important that people understand that during times of adversity, it we can learn a lot during those times. Probably more than sometimes during times of success. During times of success, we feel like I feel like sometimes you just take it for granted. Well, of course, life is good. That's the way it's supposed to be. And but during times of adversity, you really are struggling with that, and you're really having to just feel like you got to take one step forward each and every day. Um, and finally, I tell people that gratitude is really important. You know, be thankful for what you got. And no matter what the situation is, don't compare yourself to others. Don't be envious of others. The old saying that Zig Ziglar used to say, an attitude of gratitude every day. And just, and I think all those things added together will help you find that next step along the path to the end of the storm.
So, would you say it's better to start with one small decision rather than trying to figure out the entire path at once?
The obvious answer is yes. One step is better. Uh, for me, is a good time for this quick story is as we were going through the Great Recession, I was kind of getting to that point where I was getting bogged down a little bit, discouraged, just, you know, haven't gotten to that point yet where I probably realized that the storm will eventually end. Just wondering when and how. And I'm telling another friend of mine on the phone one day, who's a businessman, uh, I told him that it's so hard because I just want to know when it's going to end and how it's going to end. Will we still have a business when this ends? Or, how much longer do we have to endure this? And he said, well, you can determine when it's going to end and, you know, and how. And I said, how's that? And he said, well, you could just quit. You could just tell the banks you can't pay them back and they can sue you, foreclose on you, whatever the situation is. And I just immediately, but it went off just like that. Immediately I thought, and I told him, quitting's not an option. We are not going to quit. And I think that was that time where I made that pivot. And in talking with him, he said, so why don't you just come to the office every day and just do something? One little thing every day that you feel is helping get towards the end of this financial storm that you guys are in. And that was kind of the attitude I took at that time, Swati, was just that, getting back to what you asked, just that one small step every day. Or sometimes, guess what? I'd get a phone call from one of the bankers or something like that and saying, hey, we need to have a meeting. I got an idea how we can help get you through this. And just be willing to be open-minded to what may happen, tomorrow or today, for that matter. So yes, small step at a time.
I really like that approach because it takes away some of the pressure to make the perfect decision. Sometimes clarity does not come before we act. Sometimes it comes because we take a step and learn from what happens. And then, Bill, there's the part nobody really prepares us for, and that is the setbacks. You might have a really good week and think, okay, I'm finally getting through this. And then suddenly something happens, and all those difficult feelings come rushing back. So, how do you help people understand those moments without feeling like they have lost all the progress they made so far?
Hmm. Um, I'm not even sure how I can help myself sometimes during those times. However, I think that the old saying of 2 steps forward and 1 step back is really appropriate, and understand that that's the way it's gonna be. That's gonna be your new normal for the time being. As you're going from, you know, as I say that you're in that land in between. You're going from where you were to where you're gonna be. And during that time, you will take 2 steps forward. And then, as you said, all of a sudden next week, it's you go back. But at least you can look at that point and say, well, even though we took a step backwards, we're still further ahead than where we were a month ago. We're still making progress, even though last week we did not make progress. We went backwards. But it's, as you say, to try to tackle it all at one time is too much. For you're in a mindset at that point. You're in a tough situation, and to be making decisions that are of that great magnitude where I'm going to solve this overnight, you're not going to have the bandwidth, so to speak, to be able to do that. And I think you just have to be willing to say, no, we're going to take a step forward and see what happens. And maybe we have to take a pause and then another step forward, and then take a pause and then another step forward. Oh, we just go back. And, um, but as a leader, I think it's important, when we're talking about business and financial stuff and the mindsets that leaders have. I went into that time during the Great Recession where I had all the answers. I I just figured that's what good leaders do. They have all the answers. What I learned was good leaders don't have all the answers, and that's okay. Good leaders have to learn to listen to others, whether it's their own staff, whether it's people on the outside, other leaders. You have to be willing to take help where help comes from, and not have the attitude of, no, I got this. People are depending on me. I'm the leader. I'm going to solve this. You have to learn that you can't solve everything. You do need help, and you need to listen to others.
Think that's something we can all take comfort in. Having a setback does not erase the progress we have made. We can have a difficult moment and still be moving forward. Navigating life's unexpected challenges is not about, knowing exactly what to do. Sometimes it's simply about trusting yourself enough to take the next step, even when you can't see the whole path. So, Will, thank you so much for being here and for sharing your perspective with us today. And if listeners want to continue learning from you or connect with your work, where can they find you?
Well, first of all, my book, Restored by the Storm, Navigating Through Life's Unexpected Challenges, is available wherever books are sold. Um, it was published by a New York publisher, so it's well distributed. Just Google it, Restored by the Storm, and you'll find it. If they want to connect with me, which, that would be great, I have a website, BillDerrick.com, and you can go on there and connect with me through that. If you have a organization that's looking for a motivational speaker that wants to talk about resilience and hope in those down times, I'm available to be booked for that. Um, or whatever else you might have on your mind. Go to my website, BillDerrick.com.
Thank you once again, Bill. And to everyone listening, remember, we don't get to choose everything that happens to us, but we can choose how we meet those moments. You don't have to have everything figured out. Sometimes taking care of yourself, asking for support, and taking one step at a time is more than enough. Thank you for being with us today on Healthy Mind, Healthy Life. I am Swati, and take care of yourself.